So do it again. Welcome back on the channel.
Welcome.
I'm joined again by Levi. Today we're talking again after our last conversation, which was kind of on your channel and on my channel. We'll do it again like this today. And yeah, we last time we spoke a lot about religion and God, and I'm curious what today has in store for us. You said you had a couple notes to get started with, and we'll just see where it brings us.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's good to see you. And yeah, I've got a few just like little bits here and there. And I think did this the same time last podcast, but it's maybe a little bit weird that like I watched a couple of your videos and they're almost like it's so personal because like I watched one with you and your girlfriend, I'm pretty sure, talking about like New Year's and what you have in hope. And so yeah, I feel almost a bit weird. Like it's like almost like on my end, like a little stalkerish because you don't really know shit about me, but I like yeah, I feel like I kind of get a sense of like who you are. And
Yeah,
also, congratulations, you're engaged, which
thank
is
you.
awesome.
Thanks,
That's
man.
good. Mazel tov, as
Thank you.
in, um, yeah, but yeah. So I just had a few notes. Like I was watching a bit of your interview with John Favaki, which definitely really interesting, but I didn't get all of it yet. So I've only watched like I don't know, like 40 minutes. But yeah, he's definitely an interesting guy. He seems friendly as shit, and I love that aspect of it. Of like trying to understand the nature of your mind and that all that sort of thing. I think sometimes I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson, although I feel like sometimes these days he goes a little bit like he's just yelling at clouds, and like sometimes I just feel like he's a bit just needlessly angry at the world sort of stuff on
Mm,
Twitter at least.
yeah.
But I like him, and he seems like a nice guy, and he cares about the nature of the mind and all that stuff. But I agree with John Vervaeke that like he would do really well with like exploring more of that sort of, I think John called it embodiment practices, which my assumption is that's like more the Buddhism and Hinduism and like the sort of kind of unraveling the nature of your mind a little bit, because that's definitely where I've at least gravitated towards with all the
Mm.
sort of religiosity and all that sort of stuff. One question I did have, I think I might have misheard you, but I think you said that you're like a religious non-theist or non-theism. Is that, did I get that right? Or
Well, I was
did I?
asking John if that's even possible because in his definition
Oh,
of
okay.
non-theism, I would describe myself as such because I fit all those
Mhm.
descriptions. Let's say,
That's such a, yeah, it's interesting to me because like, yeah, I mean, it's just like a weird conception because for me, like the big puzzle piece of say, take Christianity, for example, is you really believe in Jesus and God and the sanctity of Jesus and the Holy Spirit and going to heaven and all that. But maybe
well,
I'm like being too narrow about my
let's
assumption of
say
it.
I don't think non-theism doesn't allow for me believing in God or believing in, let's say,
Oh, okay. I
Jesus
maybe I
as a.
don't know what theism is then, because I thought that was like the definition. Because when I Google it, it just says like a person who does not believe that there is a God. So that's what I,
Well, okay,
yeah.
so off the top of my head, I'll say this about non-theism and how it differs from
It,
atheism.
it's a bit of a new term for me, so maybe I'm a
Okay,
bit.
so you have atheists and you have theists, at least like more modern theists, and they both
Mm,
either believe or reject a God that is a being, let's say. So a God
mm,
that rules over the universe and intervenes where he wants to intervene and like, lifts up good people and whatnot.
mm.
And then a
Magic power.
non-theist, yeah,
Right?
a non-theist rejects the conception of God as a being. So, and the non-theist would say God is not a being at all. God is the, let's say, the source of being. He is the oneness that like, let's say, permeates all existence. And so
Right.
God does not like in Spinoza's conception of God, for example. I don't know if this is exactly non-theist. He's more of a panentheist, but um, in Spinoza's conception, God does not intervene in that sense. It doesn't mean that his universe is like a billiard ball materialist universe, but it's not like God goes like and intervenes. And if he would, what would that say about let's say, his power, because then he would be more of a
Because he,
supernatural power. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, it also seems like if he created everything and he's like super able to sort of understand what's going to happen, there would really be no need for him to interact because he's
Yeah.
already created it. So he's just running the experiment through or whatever, however you want to think about it. Like it wouldn't make sense unless he's, playing a video game or some shit and giving some people extra points or whatever. I don't know.
Boosters. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. No, that's cool. Yeah, I thought that you were saying that you specifically are like non-theist and yeah, I thought that meant specifically you don't believe in God. So I was like, oh, that's seems like an interesting
No, I
contradicting.
understand. I do. I do believe in God, and I find the idea of non-theism interesting, but I also find it a bit um, unproductive in some way because if in his description a lot of very religious people are non-theists, then what does that say about them? Because it sounds like exactly like you say, like, oh, they don't believe in God. But
Mm,
he describes explicitly religious people as having a lot of those qualities. So that's where that question came from. It's like, if
right.
this is your description, then how can I square this? So that's why I'm not a complete fan of the term, and it's why I wouldn't really describe myself as such very often. And also, I
Yeah,
take a lot of different positions, so I'm not usually stuck in one semantic description of of my belief. Let's say.
it, when you say you take a lot of positions, does that mean you sort of like for me, I know that I definitely have a lot of strong beliefs, but they definitely just change all the time. Like I feel
Yeah,
like I'm a little more sporadic and you know, if I'm in a shitty mood, maybe I'm less whatever than I would
yeah,
be. But I feel like it does sort of change moment to moment, or like sometimes I'll put the hat on, I'll see how it feels
yeah,
rather than being concrete. Is that sort of what you mean, or do you mean like some
yeah.
days you're like JC and then some days you're like Satan or whatever? I don't know.
Well, like I think I have a Christian foundation, which I'll never get rid of, for better and for worse. But I am able to take a lot of different positions. I'm able to entertain John Vervaeke's position and really try to understand it by really embodying it and try to see how it feels. Um, I think with more superficial topics, I'm very easily able to take different positions, at least to see how they feel, to understand them. And I was listening to a talk yesterday with I don't know if you know him, Nick Cave. I think he's Australian actually. He's an artist. Anyway, he was on Rick Rubin's podcast, which I really recommend. And Rick Rubin is like a
Face looks mad familiar. I love Rick Rubin.
yeah. So he was
Um,
on Rick Rubin's podcast, which I thought it was a really cool chat.
his
And
face looks.
and he
Sorry.
was saying that um, he also takes a lot of positions, but he doesn't necessarily take a lot of sides. So I like this
Right.
idea of playing with that because I'm very ignorant about a lot of things, but that means I'm also able to take different positions. So in that
Yeah.
sense, but I do have a foundation which I don't get rid of. So yeah,
Yeah. I think as well, like I don't mean to I'm not trying to be like I'm fucking older or whatever, but
yeah,
I think is at your age, like
yeah.
you're 21, is that right?
22 now. Yeah, but yeah,
It's a, oh, yeah, nice. I just turned 30. But yeah, I think just like
next
at
month.
that age, you just inherently are a little bit more just unsure about everything and more
Yeah.
humble about your approach and less sort of locked in or entrenched in your views, I would say about it.
Hmm.
But I guess it depends. There's always different types. Like I was just reading, I don't know if you know Paul Graham. He's like a startup investor guy.
I've heard
He
of
he
him
writes
for
yeah, he
sure.
writes these really impressive essays and
Okay.
a lot of people respect him and stuff. But he was talking about Sam Altman, who's the
Yeah.
creator of
Yeah.
the CEO of ChatGPT, OpenAI, and like he was like 21 and like just in like insanely ambitious, and Paul was like putting him as like one of the greatest, you know, business owners at 21 years old. So I guess it always does come in different types. Like some people are
Hmm.
very, confident, narcissistic, happy, or whatever, and then some people a bit more reserved. So
Yeah.
I guess you seem very I don't know. It's interesting because you seem very uh like I don't know something about like your presentation. You seem like you're very like you kind of know what you want and stuff like that. But then I feel like maybe you're a little bit more reserved and
Mm.
like quiet. But I don't know. It seems like you don't say that about yourself as much. I don't know.
That I'm
Like
quiet.
Yeah, like well, I don't think you've said you're quiet, but I saw in your video with your girlfriend, that you were saying like you find it easy to criticize and you're not as creative, or you thought you weren't creative, but now you're finding that you're like getting into it, and just those sorts of characteristics, they made me think like you're a little bit more introverted and stuff like that,
Mm.
but you seem very extroverted. I mean,
Yeah,
from the
well,
podcast.
I grew up very introverted as a kid, and I've been so for super long. I always hated like group gatherings and anything like that. I still tend to like one-on-one conversations much more, hence the podcast. But I think I've learned to become more extroverted in a sense.
Hmm.
I've learned to. I think I've trained myself in social interaction a lot to a degree where I can really like it, and I think that stems from learning how to really stay grounded in conversation because sometimes I would lose my presence or it would be quite overwhelming or overstimulating and now I actually feel quite relaxed doing it. I think that's largely due to, let's say, I think spiritual practices as well or meditation and breathing practices and yeah, I think actually I think yoga helped me a lot with well with everything in
Yeah,
life but with that as well to
it
to to
seems.
be able to regulate my system very quickly and actually going to Joshua Waitzkin, who you recommended me, he speaks about this very eloquently.
Yeah, I
He
think
used to be a
so.
chess champion. What is it? Tai Chi Chuan champion. Practices. I think
Yeah, that one, that part of it always seemed a bit weird to me because that's
it
like tight push hands, it just seems like a weird sport. But
is a weird
he also
sport.
he I don't know if you're into like fighting and stuff, but he's apparently a legit grappler, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and
Yeah,
he's the only person I believe to get a black belt under Marcelo Garcia, who's
yeah,
like the all-time greatest.
yeah.
Apparently, I don't know. I'm not as close, but that's what I
No,
hear.
me neither. But I'll just take his word for it. But he
But yeah,
speaks a lot
smart dude.
about regulating. Sorry.
I was just saying smart dude for sure. Like
Yeah,
Joshua Waitzkin. He's
yeah.
yeah, I really admire him a lot. He just seems like he's so clued on. And one thing I really sorry to cut you off, but one
Go
thing I
ahead.
really found very interesting about him, he was saying like because he's like a dad and he's got a kid, and he was talking about like basically like he was meditating with his son since his son was like a couple months old, I'm pretty sure. And I was
Yeah,
like, that's insane, but yeah,
yeah.
so
Yeah, also speaking about the Wim Hof method with the son, like his son would be like I think 4 or 5 years old, and he would just learn how to do Wim Hof breathing to calm himself down. But he trains his clients, which are investors, some of them, to be able to
rich.
do self-regulation. Yeah.
Mm.
So to very quickly recover from like a high heart rate and go down very quickly, do that
Yeah.
with like certain types of training, but also breathing and meditation. And I think those types of um, practices have really helped me with that as well. And I've
So
started to, sorry,
oh no, go on.
I've started to love human interaction more and more over the years. Like
Nice.
I think since like 3 or 4 years, I've started to really see a lot of value in it. But they have to be for me real conversations. So I'm very rarely in a very superficial conversation. I often quickly
Don't like
engage
talking
in
weather and stuff
not for very
because it
long. I think it's good. Like it serves its function, but I like the bulk of it to be meaningful in some way.
yeah, I feel yeah. I have two questions. One is I just out of curiosity, does that mean like with your partner, are you like always very serious? Like is she like making a
No,
joke and you but the existential angst of life is it like that sort of stuff or no?
no, I'm the
Um,
opposite. With my partner, I'm like the most silly person, and I find it
okay.
very hard to be serious for very long. And that's I think so good because she's a very smart girl, but she's not someone who loves to speak about ideas a lot,
Hmm.
and that's actually
It seems
perfect.
like that's pretty common. Like I don't want to like broad brush women in general, but it seems like women are more often like they're interested in like people and stuff rather than like the social things
More
rather than
generally,
like
yeah, for sure.
yeah ideas and
But
weird concept.
so I go to university, and that's where like most of the girls there, they are a lot. of that like energy, like masculine
Mm.
intellectual energy, and I really don't like it. It's really not good for me because I have so much of it myself already. I need someone who does the opposite for me, and she does that
Yeah,
perfectly. She gets me to
awesome.
breathe and to because she's a yoga instructor, so she gets me to
Oh,
really yeah,
my girlfriend's been going pretty heavy on the yoga, like twice a day for a little
nice.
bit, and yeah,
Yeah,
she's
that's
been
good.
loving it.
Good man.
Yeah. I think for me, I think we might even be maybe slightly more opposite. Like I feel like sometimes I have like I definitely have like feminine energy, like
Mm,
which sounds shit and I'm probably a little bitchy or whatever, but I definitely yeah, I just like I'm very like social and talk and I definitely have like a weirdly empathetically like somewhat feminine side to me where I'm just like, I don't know. If I see a cute baby, I'm like, oh my God, like it's fucked.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
especially like growing up, I was just friends with like a lot of pretty like hard dudes. Like we were just all degenerates and everyone was, you know, little criminals and stuff like that when I was young. And I would just be like, how cute's this puppy to guys who are like in and out of jail. And I just, yeah, I don't know. It's
yeah,
probably not the best. So you're really into like meditation and stuff like that? Like, or is that your primary practice? Like, obviously you're probably into praying and stuff like that, but I'm
yeah,
curious if like most people would never talk about being present in conversation, I would think, unless they're like pretty deep into that sort of stuff. Like the
yeah,
idea of itself, I don't
yeah.
think.
So thank you. That's a good question. I was learning about meditation a while back, like 4 or 5 years ago, I think, and a lot of people just doing it every day and seeing so many benefits from it. And I was very curious about it because it wasn't evident to me how sitting in silence
Oh
and
yeah,
watching your thoughts, helps you because I was also much more materialistic back then. So I couldn't really understand these things very well. But I just started doing it because I trusted that process pretty well. So I meditated daily for a year or two. And I just noticed that, well, meditation alongside writing and other things really helped me control my anger because I was a very angry kid and teenager. I had a lot of problems with that. Not
yeah, right.
gigantic things, but I got angry very quickly, and I didn't like that about myself.
Yeah, you strike me as pretty nice. So yeah, like I'm just surprised
Maybe
you're very
now,
angry.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I was very angry as like a kid, like when I was
yeah,
really I was just pissed off all the time. But then when I got into like my teens, I decided to chill the fuck out. So,
that's good. Yeah, I went the other
sorry to,
way. No, it's all
yeah,
good. I went more angry, and I noticed that being in meditation, I could really notice these feelings of anger and then just let them go, to acknowledge them, and that really helped me. So I did that for a long time, very seriously, and I still do it regularly with yoga and sometimes in daily life. But I think what I've been trying to do now is to just apply that type of being to notice thoughts, to let them go, and feelings as well, just in daily life. So in conversation
Mhm.
right now, this is what I'm trying to do right now. Like every time in podcasts, especially when I feel myself getting distracted, I try to go back to the conversation, to my breath, and then I'm back in it. So that's how I apply it still today a lot.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's heaps good because like with what you're saying, like anger or just any emotion really, like at least for me, unless I'm like really involved in those sorts of practices, I don't even like the conception of being angry or upset, like it doesn't even register as like that's something I'm experienced. That just is me. Like
Hmm.
I'm either distracted or hungry and like it just becomes part of me. Like
Yeah,
it's not even I'm like, there's no noticing it. It's just that's who I am, and it's just taking over my body. Which isn't to say I'm like bipolarly like going crazy or anything, but I think like most people they're not even recognizing that they're just thinking like 24/7, and you're just like
yeah,
going from one thing to the other.
yeah,
For me, meditation was like that it was something I started very much probably similar to you. I was kind of like this seems like some fucking pansy weird stupid bullshit like as well, my mom and my dad used to be very like hippie, not
hmm,
crystals and stuff, but they just used to be very like just sort of into that sort of stuff. And it just I like some things, you know, I like Jimi Hendrix and stuff like that, but it seemed a bit weird. But for me, because I have ADHD, that's what got me into the door, because I was just like, oh, it could help me focus. It could help me like enhance my cognitive attention and span and stuff. And then yeah, later I realized there's just like something much deeper where like even if it was kind of like fucking my attention, I would be like, oh, this is still so like there's like a deeper layer where it's like yeah, a lot of it's like you're living these ideas and this caricature of like who you think you are. And then like from meditation, you just sort of release these stories that you're living
Mm.
in. At least that's how it's felt for
Yeah.
me. But yeah.
Yeah, you release the layers, or at least you notice them. And you don't let them
Yeah.
control you. Yeah.
So why do you think you were so angry, huh? These bullies and shit, or just fucking your dad. I feel like having a dad, I'm just playing around because I'm a
Hmm.
joker and I like to talk
Yeah,
shit.
go ahead.
But having a dad who's like at church, like giving sermons or whatever, that I would be so embarrassed. Like just not that I would like be annoyed at my dad, but I think I'd be like, oh my God, don't embarrass me or whatever. Do you have any feeling of that or not really?
I was more annoyed by having to go every Sunday. Um, and I really didn't
Yes.
enjoy it. I hated being forced into things. I think that's one of the
Oh
main reasons I was angry as a child. I hated being
yeah.
forced to read or going to school and doing the
Yeah.
schoolwork.
That was the same.
Yeah. And
Kids
so
above.
as soon as I got out of it, that was when I started to realize that it wasn't books that I hated. It was the like being forced to read it, being coerced into doing those things. And I understand it. I mean, kids, otherwise it's just gonna like, I don't
Do
know,
whatever the
play
fuck they
video
want.
games the
Yeah.
whole day. So I really get it, but it just I've never liked authority as a child. So I think that was the main thing that really bothered me. And as I grew older, I got more and more autonomous. It's how they described me as autonomous. My teachers, I didn't even know what the word meant at the time, but
Mm.
it's getting more and more autonomy and responsibility that makes my life better and better these days. So I actually didn't like being a kid at all.
Yeah, same. I mean, so like Christmas time just passed. My birthday is in Christmas, and family was always like lower middle class. And I just remember just me and my brother, like his birthday is the day before mine. We just always broke. And so like we'd only get shit in December. And I just remember just being forced at school to just do bullshit that I don't even understand why I need to learn about
Mm,
fucking trigonometry, whatever it is.
yeah,
And just being forced to do shit that I just found such a dull. I was a pretty bad student though. I think I kind of said that last time.
yeah,
I skipped a lot of school and yeah, kind of became a bit of a shit person. I think for you though, it's kind of interesting because you've gone like full on. You're getting a degree, and that seems like a lot of study and all that. So
yeah. No,
how
I needed. Sorry.
how's it going anyway? Your Egyptology.
Oh, very well. I just finished my second to last semester, and then I have one more semester writing my thesis, and then I'm done for the bachelor degree at least. Um, I think the reason I went into university was that in my country you have a system where you have different levels of high school, let's say.
Mm.
And I got started off on the highest level because as a kid they said that I was smart enough to do that. And so if you just get C's on that level, you pass every time.
Right.
So I knew the bare minimum I had to do to stay on that highest level. And that wasn't that hard for me. But I did fail. Like I had to redo a year, for example. I had to go to summer school twice. I had to do, um, like, I had to go to a study guide to help me. And I think it was really taking a year off after high school where I started to really love learning and to actually like reading books, to like intellectual endeavors, to listen to podcasts and all these things that sparked my joy again in that. And so that's how I ended up
Yeah,
pursuing university. Yeah.
I'm the same. I think I don't know if I said this last time, so I hope I'm not just fucking repeating
Oh, good.
myself, but I think yeah, I was out of school for like a couple months and living with my mom out in the bush, which is what we call like countryside.
Yeah.
I was so bored. And I think I came across a Tim Ferriss podcast and it
Mm.
just completely changed my entire life. I just heard he's so like methodical and analytical and like just he sounds very, smart in the way he talks, or at least when I was that age, I was like, damn, this guy sounds like he's actually like thinking through everything. And I was just like, what does this guy do? Like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, he's like startup investing, all this. And I just realized like I saw like all my friends going sort of like the other way. Like everyone was just trying to
Yeah.
basically it was like who's toughest or like who can sell the most drugs and like just like that sort of life. And I
Yeah.
was like, maybe I should fucking pick up a book. And I just, yeah, I don't think I ever proper read a book before then. And then, yeah, I think that year I read like 20 books and yeah,
Nice one.
it was same sort of setup as you, but
Yeah.
you seem smarter as a kid. I was fucking such a shit kid. So
I don't know.
yeah, nice. Cool. Um, yeah, I think for me, I think I kind of touched on it for a moment, but I hate to just like I never shut the fuck up, so I'm probably just gonna like do that. But I was always interested in like sort of like learning about religion, not because I thought it was real, but because I thought it just seemed like an interesting part of history. My dad's like a history teacher and stuff, but I never really like got into the stuff. But I liked
Mm.
like medieval history, war, but mythology was always something that I was like, oh, this is cool, like Zeus and the Greek pantheon of and gods and stuff. And that's where I sort of like thought it was really interesting. But I kind of always viewed religion in that way. Like I was like, oh yeah, it's just like some fun made up stories that, they might have like some deeper meaning, but it's obviously just like fictitious, fictional, like basically like sci-fi. But I think with the Buddhist stuff, I really delved into it at one point in time. And I had this like very weird experience where like I had sort of like the same setup as I don't know if you know like Sam Harris, and he's very just like he's very non-religious and pretty critical of it. But he said that he meditated for I think like over a year and just didn't really get it. Was just like sitting there thinking. And I sort of had a similar thing where I was just like it took me like probably 2 3 years of like doing it for an hour every day before I really kind of like got it. But then I had like a really deep experience. I had like heart issues. Like I have like super high cholesterol just for whatever reason. Like I have a genetic thing where my liver doesn't metabolize cholesterol. And I was at this party and I hadn't realized then, but I was soon to realize that I had celiac, which is like an autoimmune disorder where if I eat gluten, it just like destroys my body. My cells attack each other. Anyway, I was like partying for like a whole like it was like a 5 day party out in the sticks. And at the end of it, I was pretty sure I was having a heart attack and it like just scared the fuck out of me. And so like 40 minutes of just like sitting there, very like just trying to concentrate on my body to not die. But it really did feel like my body was dying. Like my whole arm went numb and it was just like piercing in my heart pain. And so like I just sat there like super straight back because I knew like you know, oxygen to the brain might help. But then like 20 minutes into it or whatever, I had this just like crazy, and I chalk it up as like a Buddhist type thing, but I had this very crazy experience where I kept feeling like I was about to die just like endlessly. And then at some point it just hit me like this crazy epiphany that I wasn't gonna die. And then like at that moment it just sort of felt like my entire life I was just like wearing goggles that were like making me drunk or some shit, and then I took them off and I could just like see the world. It was like the first time I really felt that like my identity, like my thoughts were just not me. Like because I know with meditation before that I would have moments where I'm like, oh, there's anger and I can see it, but then I would just sort of like forget and go back into like being angry or like I'm hungry or whatever the fuck it was. But this was it was just like so solid. It was like a static thing. Like I just no longer had any conception that my thoughts were who I was. It was just like I was
Mm.
independent of them and viewing them. But it like stayed like that for almost a month straight. Um, and then the first time I drank alcohol, it just like disappeared. And yeah, so that was like a long fucking tangent on that shit. But so that sort of stuff made me feel very like I still don't really believe in like karma and stuff like that, but I have like strong beliefs that like Buddha or whoever was onto something, and there's definitely something there that can like you can understand the nature of your own mind.
Mm.
Whereas, yeah, I think sometimes with the other ones, I see there's like there's good things about Christianity and whatnot. Jesus seemed like a cool dude. Treat others how you want to be treated. I'm all on board, but like it seems like the thing that people are trying to sort of point to it's most crystallized in either Buddhism or sometimes in Hinduism and like Taoist things. But yeah, I don't know. That was just like a really long fucking drive about
Well,
my
thank you
life.
for
But yeah,
sharing.
that really sent me like on a different path as well because I just was like, yeah, even now, like, so I can sort of re-enter that state, but only if I've like meditated for like quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I don't know.
Okay, well, thank you for
They,
sharing. It sounds like very intense experience. I can't imagine what it must feel
yeah.
like to think you're losing your
Yeah,
life.
some people tell me, some doctors are saying like, oh, it's probably just like gastro stuff because you have celiac. But I have a cardiologist who like they focus on the heart and shit, and he's like, you probably did, dude. Like you had like the highest cholesterol of anyone I've seen, and I was just like off medication for a bit because it made me feel shit. And he's like, yeah, you probably did. Like your heart's fucked. And I was like, oh, that's fucked. So anyway,
Okay.
there
Do
you
you
go.
still experience issues with this today?
No, I was waiting to get on a new drug, and I'm on that now, and it like everything's fixed. It's just like not everything's fixed, but it like actually solves the issue. Whereas the stuff I was on before was called statins, and they kind of just like it's not really master issue, but they kind of just like fuck up your ability to metabolize cholesterol.
Yeah.
Whereas the medication now is like I inject it, and it like has liver enzymes. Anyway, it's boring stuff, but
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
I
there you
got you. Well, to say a bit about the Buddhism, I think a lot of people. Oh, nice.
go, little
It's a beautiful
baby.
cat right there for the people
Yeah, it's
not
cute.
watching. It's a nice cat.
Mhm.
Well, I think Buddhism is. I think there's a lot of wisdom in it. When I was 18, I think I read Siddhartha by Hermann
Mm.
Hesse. I don't know if you know it.
I've read it. I didn't get it when I read it. I definitely probably should read it again.
I think
I
it's a
just think
very yeah.
I think it's too subtle
Mm.
from when I read it. It just like it's very like I was just like it seems like a boring story. This guy's not eating food, begging for shit.
Yeah,
I think now I would probably appreciate it a bit more.
yeah,
Though
yeah.
I do think instinctively I do think it's and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it's as deep as like some of the other like Buddhist stuff out there personally. But maybe
I,
I'm wrong.
I think
I
it's
don't know.
possible. I don't because it's a German guy who wrote it, so I'm not sure. But I when
Yeah,
I
I mean, you can be German and I think what's that one dude? Eckhart Tolle. He's like German or
yeah,
something, isn't
I think so.
he? Yeah,
Sounds German.
yeah. Do you
You got it?
know of him?
Eckhart, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's German.
My partner's read some books of his. I haven't myself,
Yeah.
but yeah. So I think when I read that book, I profoundly started viewing the world in a different way, and it really transformed me at the time. Like it made me get into tears very quickly.
Really?
Yeah, it resonated
Awesome.
super deeply at the time, especially. And I've tried rereading it since, and I don't feel the same way um, as I did then. But I think there's something pure about just letting that experience be that experience. It mostly got
Yeah.
me to really like view the world so profoundly uh, in a different way. It was like, wow, I never knew that just this garden around me that I've seen for 18 years is so beautiful if I let it be.
Yeah.
So
That's some of the crazy shit, like just the everyday stuff that you just take for granted. It's like sometimes you just like it blows you the fuck away.
yeah, and I think it captures that way of being extremely well. So I really gravitated toward that. Um, but moving on to, let's say, other religions, which you spoke about, I think that through a Buddhist lens or an Eastern lens, it's very hard to understand Christianity and same vice versa. So
Mm,
I try to not look at it in that way because I think it will impede you from seeing its strength. Let's say they're just so fundamentally different. Like I do not subscribe to this idea of all religions are the same. I think they are so profoundly different that comparing them is a fool's errand. Let's say, um, yeah,
mm.
that's all I'll
What's
say
that?
about it.
You know, Baha'i, I don't
Yeah,
know how to pronounce.
yeah,
That's like, I think that's the one that tries to be like, let's just fucking take everything from
yeah. It tries
everything.
to integrate different types of faiths.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast from Brian Moraresuku or some shit.
More
I
rescue,
don't
I
know.
think. Yeah,
Res- And it seems like he was, I haven't read his book, but it seems like he was basically making a case that it's like the classic, I think I talked about last time, like the Joe Rogan theory, sort of like
Yeah,
old religions were very inspired by drug experiences, and the wine and beer and stuff they had was like probably much more psychedelic than what we have now. But it seems like he was actually making a case that like Dionysus and Jesus might have been like the same person. I'm not saying that he said that, but it seems like he was sort of pointing to that because he was just showing like all these sort of linkages. I'm not saying that is necessarily true or anything, but I just thought it was interesting to like, yeah, I do find the whole like psychedelic roots of religious stuff interesting.
yeah,
But I think I definitely have a bias because I took psychedelics when I was about your age, and it
yeah,
changed my life. So
yeah. Very fair. I read the book, The Immortality Key. I think you did a
yeah.
very
Do you like
entertaining.
it?
Yeah, it was fun at the time, but I also realized that one of the reasons people are so obsessed with the psychedelic roots of religion is because we're very um, materialistic, let's say. So we want to attribute things to their physical roots. Whereas in those
Mm.
times, I think having religious experience was just so much easier in a sense that you're often deprived of let's say food and water and there's a lot of
Don't know what weather's gonna be like and shit.
yeah. I mean
Um,
nowadays we are always fed. We have the heating on like 24/7. I think it's hard to have religious
heating?
experience unless huh?
Do you say heating?
Yeah, like we're
The
temperature regulated people. You have
Oh
your
yeah,
AC in the
yeah,
back. I have my radiator on in front of me. I think that once you deprive yourself of things and
dude, it's so hot up it. I'm
it's
so
just a
not
lot
used to it.
different. But I actually wrote
Yeah,
about this
I
for
think
Egypt.
I think you're right. That seems true. But it
Yeah,
seems like back in the day it was more no, because there's been that whole like from the 60s, like this very like strong war on drugs and all that
yeah,
sort of stuff. But it seems like back then it was probably less taboo or whatever as well. So
yeah,
yeah. But it might be that there's a bit of like a pendulum swing sort of thing where like, first time I smoked DMT or had acid or whatever, I was probably like, everyone should take this, it will change the world. And then I
yeah.
think like now I'm definitely more leveled, and I think like, yeah, it's one experience. I definitely feel like for me personally, I've had more, if you want to call them transformative or just like enjoyable or euphoric or whatever, from just sitting and meditating than I've ever had from any sort of like drug thing.
Yeah.
Um, can I ask you, you said like that did something to you, Siddhartha. Can I ask like how that sort of experience has happened with like the Bible or whatever, like, or
Yeah.
your dad's teaching, that sort of stuff? Like, have you had that same sort of thing, or is it just more just like that's just like deep rooted from like being a child and stuff?
I think that
Articulate it better.
sorry.
I can probably articulate the question a little bit
No,
better
it's
if
great.
you
I,
want.
I really got it. I got it fully. I think people at home as well. I think for me, I had a similar moment with Christ where I have, I don't know, I think made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I've often felt that I didn't understand why my parents kept forgiving me for them. I kind of thought I really didn't get it. Like I was such a bad kid and so annoying. And I think that at some point I had more of a cathartic moment where I really burst into tears and I asked my father, like, why do you keep doing this? And he would say that it's because he's my father. And that was one moment where sometimes you have a movie and there's like a revelation at the end of the movie and makes you view the entire movie differently. That's how that
Mm,
felt for me. It's like, oh wait, all these people that I thought were annoying my whole life were actually just trying to support me to become the best person possible. And a lot of them were
mm,
inspired by the Christian story to do that. And then another moment was when I was in Italy, in Milan, actually. I was there for about a month for work. And I was having quite a difficult time in some ways where I felt, um, I don't know, I felt a bit lost. I felt that I was making mistakes. And I went to a cemetery there almost every day. There was barely anyone. This was like peak COVID time, so you couldn't really do anything. But no one was ever at the cemetery except for me and a couple of cats. And I would go there for some reason, even though I was explicitly like not Christian. I didn't like Christianity at the time.
Wait,
I
you say
can't.
cemetery?
Sorry.
You say cemetery? That you went to a
Um,
cemetery?
cemetery is like a graveyard, right? Am I?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what. Yeah,
yeah. That's it.
I thought I misheard and you meant church or something.
No, no,
No,
it's like a
that's fine.
cemetery, but there's like chapels inside and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, okay, I get you.
And I don't know. This was like after I had also a psychedelic experience, but I was kind of like figuring out my own morality, like we were speaking about last time. And I was kind of
Mm,
realizing that that didn't really work. Like I was thinking some rules don't apply to me as they do apply to others, and it's kind of this. I don't know if you've read Dostoevsky, but this Raskolnikov idea of like you have it's the main character of one of his books where he basically views the world in a sense like you have the normal people and the uh, extraordinary individuals who can invent their own morality and who can dance around those things. Anyway, I had like a moment there where I just felt really bad about myself, and then I went to a chapel and I saw this image of Christ, and it just made me it made me break down into tears because I felt that I was loved this whole time, even through making mistakes, and I was judged as well, but in a way of like trying to get me closer to his light and to become as good as possible. And I think that's one of the things Christ offers. It's a it's a personal relationship that I do not find in um, many other
Eastern.
religions, as far as I understand. I mean, the East, yeah, especially because the East is so much more about just completely throwing away the ego, which I think is beautiful in a sense as well. I really understand it, like I deeply understand it. It's why I practice yoga and why I have a deep reverence for Hinduism, among others. But I just don't find it anywhere else, and I would find it very hard not to have that. It's the only way in which I can have a deeply personal relationship with God. So I think that's to answer your question.
Yeah, it definitely answers it. Yeah, because I'm just like there's something in my like I've definitely I've done a lot of meditation and psychedelics and just like crazy exercising for 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, just like weird stuff like that. That just like even those moments they can really you can feel something very spiritual. And I think cold exposure is like another one
Yeah,
where you can
yeah,
get
yeah, yeah,
great.
for sure. Sauna as well. You should do sauna cold, sauna cold.
That's definitely the
You'll
best. Yeah.
ascend.
Yeah, I've done it a bit. I've never done like ice bath sauna, but I've done like cold shower sauna, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
But yeah, for whatever reason, I just don't have that sort of like it just it I I am a little bit of an offensive person, and I just sort of like say what I think, and it pisses people off. But it feels a little. I almost want to say silly, but it's not silly. But it feels like some part of it feels like if you're really looking with everything in your being to find something, then like eventually you will find it, even if you have to sort of like manifest it yourself. And it just seems like that sort of thing is what I see from a lot of people who tend to like sort of gravitate that way. Like, for instance, my brother's very religious, and like he's got like um proverbs stuff tattooed on him and all that sort of stuff. But it feels like it was really just like it was a result of like he felt so lost in life that it wouldn't matter what it was. Like if it was Scientology was near him, he would have gravitated to that. And yeah, sometimes I just get that sort of feeling. And like the relationship with God thing, I guess I just don't understand that much either, because it's like this is gonna sound rude, but like are you literally like do you hear voices? Like I don't understand what a relationship with that means unless it's in sort of like the spiritual Eastern context of like I can feel like I'm Brahman and I am one with everything and that sort of
mm,
thing. But when it's a relationship with like Jesus, who was like, let's say, a person or a god that died previously, that confuses me a bit more unless it's like I'm actually like if I close my eyes, I feel like I can hear him. Sort of.
all right.
Do you get what
So
I'm saying?
yeah, that's a great question. I think it's very fair. So I interviewed John Vervaeke on my channel, as you spoke about, and
Mm.
he has this thing that he calls internalizing the
And he's not
sage.
he's not religious either. I think I heard him say.
No, he's not explicitly a Christian, although he seems to sometimes.
Is he? something else? Is he like
Um,
Catholic or something like that?
I don't know how he would characterize himself. Definitely as a non-theist, like we spoke about,
Yeah, okay.
but he teaches Buddhism, Buddhist psychology, University of Toronto. So he's very much interested in that. He practiced Tai Chi Chuan. Um,
Oh, yeah.
so yeah. Anyway, he speaks about he's really into Socrates, but he speaks about the symphony of sages that he has, and that's basically he internalizes certain sages from the past, figures,
Mm,
symbols almost. Like he internalized Socrates to a degree where he can ask questions to Socrates. So he will
mm.
basically, it's basically this idea of what would Socrates do in this moment.
What
So
would Jesus like that same sort
exactly.
of, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he describes this practice as um, making you wiser without having to actually consult these sages themselves. So there's literally been studies on this where it shows how if you have a problem and you speak to multiple people about it, then you're probably going to deal with that problem in a better way. But you don't even have to do that. If you consult sages that you've
Mm.
internalized, you can actually make much wiser decisions in your life. So anyway, he introduced that, and he has a bunch of sages that he speaks to. I don't know how you want to call that. So he has Siddhartha and Socrates, and Jesus. Jesus is in there as well, I believe. And for me, it's not exactly that, but it's coming closer to that. Speaking to God for me is never in voices. I also don't think verbally. For me, things are very much more visual and more, let's say,
You don't think you
physical.
can you not think verbally at all, or you just don't
I
typically?
can if I force myself to, but it's not natural to me. Um, but so for me, it's more of a physical feeling where I can communicate with with God in the sense that I mean he's always there. I mean God for me is the source of all being, so he's always there. But for me, channeling his presence is done through meditating on Christ or in moments where I feel that I'm about to do something really stupid, thinking about what Jesus would do in this situation and actually feeling the presence. And in Christian terms, it would be feeling the Holy Spirit go through me and
Mm.
then doing the best thing I could possibly do. And I try to basically do that in all my actions where I'm about to get angry, but I choose forgiveness instead, or I'm about to make a nasty remark to someone, and instead I don't. Um, for me, the most effective way to do that and the realest way of doing that for me is to consult God through the figure of Christ, and I do a lot of prayer in that sense. And do I feel He talks back with His voice? No, not exactly, but I for me he's definitely always there. Although he's not exactly a human, and he's not exactly, a man on a cloud, but he's maybe the symbol of the highest good I could possibly imagine. He symbolizes that, but not symbol in the reductive 21st century sense of the word. A symbol is something that can refer beyond itself, and so yeah, that's how I would answer the question.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, like I definitely I get what you mean with that sort of thing. Like ever since I was a kid, I don't know why, it's just like some weird autistic thing I did, but I always had this like thing where I would just like visualize people very well or try to visualize them very well. And I would do this thing where I would be like, if I had like a fucking dinner party, who would I
Yeah,
be with? And like John von Neumann and Feynman, Einstein, people like that. And like I would have this weird thing where I would like kind of consult, well, not even consult with them, but it would be like that, like what would they say or what would they do in this sort of situation? And obviously today it's even easier with like ChatGPT and stuff like
yeah,
that. Like you can, oh, what would they say or whatever? It
yeah,
might not be the best, but I don't know. Josh Waitzkin again, he had this cool little exercise. He was like consulting Tim Ferriss, and he was like, Tim was feeling very stuck, and he was telling him to do basically like an exercise where you write out advice that your future self would give to you now. And even just doing that is like if you're like, what would Lucas, who's like 28, what would he be thinking about? What would he be doing? What kind of things would do that? And just that idea of like it's just like extrapolating forward. For some reason, it can just like get rid of all the bullshit in your mind. You're like, oh yeah, I'm stressed about this dumb job or thesis or relationship thing. Well, 28-year-old me or whatever it is, he wouldn't give a fuck. So like, why am I not
Yeah.
focused on
Yeah.
buying Bitcoin or whatever the fucking advice it would give you?
Mm.
So yeah, cool. That's interesting. I feel, yeah. Do you like, because I always hear, I've listened to a lot of JBP, Jordan Peterson, on that stuff, and he said something very similar to that. Not that exactly, but he said like JC, sorry, I just love saying JC. I'll say Jesus Christ is like the highest good. But like even that, like that's not really true though. Is it like there are people who have like done more for the world and you know what I mean? Like the highest good now, and this is where I probably will depart a little bit from you, but there's a group of people online that they call themselves like the rationalists and stuff like that, and there's this thing like effective altruism, and there's this Australian philosopher, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Peter Singer, but he's like it's like utilitarianism
Yeah.
view is how they view it. It's like doing the most good to the most people and
Yeah.
doing that as effectively as you can. And so like for me, it feels like let's say if Jesus was here now, wouldn't he be trying to focus on like fucking, if I have $1 billion, I could cure cancer or whatever the fuck it might be, and like pursuing that sort of path of like, how can I literally help the most people, not just on a psychological level, but like, how can I, give bed sheets to fucking Yugoslavian kids or whatever it might be. I don't even know
I
where
don't
Yugoslavia.
I don't know. Like for me, Jesus caused so many bed sheets. It's not just
He cost
psychological.
bed sheets.
Yeah, like I mean, I think he
Bed sheets is like
transformed.
the weird. I don't know why I would say bed sheet. Like I
No,
don't. It's
okay.
not that. It's like a weird
I
one.
just think that he transformed the world so fundamentally that he made so many people this charitable. I'm not sure if we would have the effective altruists these days if it wasn't for him. I think his let's say influence is going to ripple down and has rippled down for millennia. I I don't
Sure.
know
But
if
couldn't you say the same for like, fucking Einstein or Elon Musk and like people like that in a way where in some sense you could be like even more so because of like, like just the change in the technological trajectory of the future of the world and stuff like that. Like, in some sense isn't like I'll just use him as again as example, even if I know he's like political and people hate him, but like couldn't he be seen in some sense as like even more of like a Christ-like figure because he's, working his ass off to try and build spaceships or whatever the fuck it is.
I have,
Um,
well, on the one hand, I would say time will tell because this is such a recent phenomenon and we don't know where
mm,
technology is going to take us. Like, for example, the Neuralink thing, I don't know
I'm all for
in
it.
what way
Just sign me
this,
up.
huh?
I'm 100% on board. I'll be the first. Like I'm so into it. I've always the idea of like a USB stick and bam, I just read 12 books or something. Like I just love it. I'm like, fuck yeah. I will
Yeah, I
definitely
mean,
start
it,
looking.
it remains to be seen how good that is. I think he brings it in
Yeah.
with a good argument, being like, I'm gonna cure people's deafness or whatever. But
Sure.
um,
It's definitely that's not the rationale. His rationale, as far as I understand it, is nothing to do with that. It's just that's how you have to. That's the only
to
way
sell it,
people are gonna
yeah, I
drill
mean,
into.
I understand.
I think the AI stuff is like very like there's like a path where like some people believe like AI will just kill us in a year or 3 years or whatever it might be.
Okay,
And so I think his version was like Neuralink will be like we can either be symbiosis with it, like somehow integrated, or it will just fucking whatever
I understand.
kill us.
But to answer the
All right.
question, I think Elon, in many ways, does good for the world. Is he
Mm.
the most Christ-like individual I've ever come across? Definitely not. Um, even though
What I think what I was like, he's even more Christ. Like if Christ is like the most highest ideal, I was actually going even for like he's more Christ-like than Christ or whatever is what I was sort of
well,
going at. Because
watch the
like
way
how
he
many people?
acts. I think you should
Yeah,
watch
he's a
the.
bit. He's definitely a bit bipolar or
You
narcissistic
can do a lot
personality.
of good things for the world, but if you don't carry out the spirit of goodness at all times, then how can I ever compare him to Christ. I would find it very difficult to do. Like Elon, don't get me wrong, I think he's done a lot of good things for the world. I'm also worried about technology in a sense. I'm not completely sure that it's all good. I think anyone claiming that it's
Yeah,
all good should
I
you be
feel you.
very suspicious of. But yeah, I don't think I can compare them at all. Even though I really respect Elon, um, there's also a lot of, let's say, I don't know if it's
Baggage, or
anger or resentment in his soul, and it's fair.
okay.
Like it's fair to be angry at some
I
of the
think
people he's angry at.
yeah, I think his dad was a bit crazy, and he's got part of that inside of his
That's
brain. Like he,
possible, but to be Elon, you have to be an unbalanced person. Like there's just
sure.
no other way.
Hmm.
And an unbalanced person who dedicates his life to that to me is very admirable, but it shouldn't be the norm. Whereas I think acting
Sure.
like
And
Christ can get you a lot better things in life, and I think acting like Christ is much more scalable than acting like Elon, let's say. So in that sense,
for
I can't.
sure. And I guess like part of me is more, I'm not necessarily talking about like what is representation that the most people should do or whatever, but like just the very fact that you would even think like, oh, I want to be Christ-like, whatever, it puts you in a different category of like trying to be the most exceptional or whatever, like trying to be as inherently good as you can or whatever. And
Yeah.
so like more I'm talking about that than rather like I don't think, my grandma or whatever who's dead, I don't know, bro. My granddad shouldn't, try to fucking solve the problems of the world.
No, but you're
But I
saying
mean,
he's done a lot of good with it, even though we couldn't necessarily mimic it.
yeah, I guess.
That's fair.
I think so.
That's fair. I
What,
mean, yeah.
yeah. Sorry, no, I'll let you talk.
No,
I
go ahead. I
fucking
have nothing.
I'm like a puppy. I just get excited and I interrupt people and
Go
it's
ahead.
not good. No, I was just gonna say like one of the just speaking on those sorts of things, one of the things that I've just like really struggled to grapple with personally lately is like just I'm too much online and stuff, and there's a lot of people in that sphere of like AI and all that sort of stuff that there's a lot of people that are like very smart that I respect, and there's been this sort of I wouldn't even say research like insurgence of like there's a lot of people who basically think something to the lines of consciousness or whatever the self, it's just data. If we can just send that data from your brain to a computer, then that's cool. Like you can just do that and then kill your biological body, and then you're physically on like a digital substrate, like
Yeah.
on the internet. And for me, that's just like it's just so intuitively like, oh, you would just die, and there will just be like a Chat GPT version of you that's like an emulation. But there's like this really big push on my small sphere of Twitter or whatever of like some of them are like really smart, respected people who are just like, no, like that's the point. That's like progress. Like biology itself is actually just like a negative, well, not a negative, but it's like a bootloader for what's really important, which is like machine intelligence and stuff like.
Yeah.
And for me, it's so intuitively like that's wrong. You guys just want the world to die, but it's like this really strong. Like I'm seeing heaps and heaps of people on my sphere say this sort of stuff, and it just creeps me the fuck out. And I just
Yeah.
like I can't grips with it. Like it's just such a weird thing.
I think
Yeah.
it's absolutely ridiculous to be honest to think that the mind is to be reduced to the biology of the mind or the biology of the brain. I think it's really foolish, but I think it exemplifies our age. We have a lot of intelligence, but we don't have a lot of wisdom. So some people are going
Yeah.
to run us straight into the ground and think it's a good thing because they've used their individual rationale to do it. And
Mm,
I think they're honestly just devoting themselves to the god of technology. And
for
technology is
sure.
not a bad thing, but if you put technology as God, then you're gonna have some trouble.
For sure. Although, no, actually, I definitely like say, yeah, it's interesting because I'm an interesting contrast to your view because I'm definitely like techno optimist, and I'm actually on the side that it is possible we will build something that, if you don't want to say God, it very close to God, like anything that's physically possible with physics, we will be able to build something that can do that. If you want to call it God or whatever, like that. Again, for me, I don't really believe in God, so like God is more just a placeholder for like things like a very powerful thing that we can't understand, like the Big Bang or whatever. Well, one interesting thing I saw as well, I'm sorry, ADHD, is that the Big Bang theory was actually it was like some priest who came up with the idea. I didn't even I had no idea. It's like it's so. 'Cause I always think of the Big Bang Theory as like this conception of like, you know, religious people like and priests and Christians and stuff. They just absolutely hate it, and I'm sure they do. But I was just really surprised that it was like a priest that came up with that conclusion or
I didn't
idea.
know.
Or it out.
I didn't know.
Could be wrong. I just saw somebody say it, and I don't fact check enough stuff. So
No, that's all good. I mean, a theory is a
yeah,
theory until proven
I
false. So
yeah. Well, but I guess, but so with those sorts of things like brain emulations or uploads and stuff, like I personally feel like the things there that you'll never be able to prove it false or right. Like it's just like it's something that like you could have something that says, yes, I'm really me and I have these memories, but that doesn't actually mean it's
no, it
so.
won't
Do you
be.
know what
Yeah, it
I mean?
definitely
Yeah.
won't be. It will be something
But
else.
it is interesting because I come from it from a different angle because like yeah, I don't believe the soul exists. Like I don't believe that's actually a real concept. And yeah, so like yeah, that makes sense that you would not want to destroy your brain and be uploaded because that's like killing your soul. But anyway, I
Well,
don't know. I'm an
I wouldn't say it like that exactly, but
yeah.
kind of.
Let me ask you a random question. You don't have to get into your personal life or whatever, but one thing I've noticed, like the last, I don't know, million girls I've dated, or just even friends I have, and especially, yeah, actually just all my friends, I'm noticing there's like a very strong, like, do you know wireheading, which is like it's a term that people use that I don't even know if it was a real experiment, but back in the day, someone put something in their brain and they use that to like just feel like euphoria or
Okay.
like deal with instead of actually taking like painkillers or something for
Yeah.
a surgery. Apparently, the person just like kept just smashing the button over and over and over until they're like blood on their finger.
I think I heard
Um,
about this maybe.
yeah, and I don't even know if it's true. I'm pretty sure I heard it on Joe Rogan, and I'm just
Okay.
so skeptical.
Yeah.
I've some stuff that I've heard on his things a couple times, and like it's been like 4 out of 5 times they've been like completely false. So I'm like,
Yeah, that's
maybe
great.
I should research it or whatever. But the term itself is used to do that. Like so, just like something that you just like do repetitively until you die or whatever. And it doesn't have to be that extreme. But I'm seeing that behavior a lot with just like everyone I know with TikTok or Instagram or whatever the fuck it is.
Hmm.
And it just like I wouldn't say it scares me, but it weirds me out a lot. Like I don't know, like when I was young, I lived with my mom out where I didn't have internet, and so I was just like, I was just not on Facebook and Instagram and stuff for a bit, and it was just like such a freeing experience. I felt like
Hmm.
there's like this thing kind of like holding me with
Yeah.
them. What I'm seeing is just like everyone I know is just like just all day. It's just fucking bum 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 bum
Yeah.
bum. Do you ever? I don't even know where I'm going with that. Sometimes I just fucking spew
No,
shit.
I mean, everyone
Feelings
is
of boredom.
dealing with it, so it's a very real problem. I think people are starting to
You and
realize. Sorry.
like, do you your friend like do you notice that as well? Like your
Yeah,
friends and family?
of course, everywhere, everyone, everyone is addicted to their phone. I don't know anyone that's not addicted to their phone, at least not in a moderate degree. But I think,
Mm.
especially nowadays, people are starting to realize that human beings are extremely susceptible to these types of things. And I think a phone is almost like a drug. It's like cocaine in your hand, and you're always carrying it with you. And if you leave people to do whatever they want, then oftentimes they get addicted to a lot of these substances. So I think we're only now starting to understand the playground of phones, and we're going to have to apply a lot of wisdom to it if we want to fix it, because I think banning these types of things is just not going to help, because technology is
I
just
mean,
evolving more and more
that doesn't even
rapidly.
yeah, that doesn't even really seem like feasible.
No,
Not that I
absolutely
would
not. You can
that,
try to do it
but
with some kids, but
oh yeah, kids might. But yeah, I mean when me and my brother when we got video games, we just fucking we locked on to that
yeah,
shit. Just
same,
like
man, same. And how
oh,
can you
but
not if you're a 14-year-old boy? Like, what do you want to do? So I think a lot of our environment is making us almost completely doomed to fail. Because if it's not video games that get you, it's pornography, and if it's not pornography, it's going to be alcohol, and if it's not alcohol, it's going to be, it's just endless. So it takes
yeah.
really a lot nowadays to become a healthy individual at like age 18 to be okay. So it's
you know,
definitely a bit, but that's why I'm saying like technology, it's not obvious that it's a good thing on its own. You have to apply a
I
lot of
do,
wisdom to it.
I definitely, I do disagree with that. Like, I do think technology is like the strongest force for good that we've ever seen by like such an insane mile that it's like hard to conceptualize it. And like obviously I'm all in on the Buddhist stuff. So like on that end, like on an interpersonal level, like yeah, that can, rid you of suffering. But then I see like, we wouldn't even exist if we all went Amish or whatever. Amish are like they're like a Christian American group where they don't believe in technology and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
If we all went that way, like we wouldn't have enough food to feed everyone and stuff like that, or medical care and to be
very
honest, most
fair.
people I know that are like sort of my type of like I'm a bit of a nerd and I love computers and stuff like that. But a lot of people I know in that space, they wouldn't even exist without modern medicine, and I wouldn't. I've got asthma and stuff like that, and cholesterol. I'm
Yeah,
like dying.
yeah.
Not actually. I'm pretty healthy,
I
but
hear you. I hear you.
I have enough. And so yeah, like for me, it does seem good, and I don't know if it's necessarily like I'm not trying to just say like paint it as one category. It's like technology equals everything good, i.e. nuclear bombs are good. But it does seem like it's pretty close to like 99% of technology has been pretty good. And even the fact of like phones and the addictive nature of them and stuff, it seems like it's bad because it's good. Do you know what I mean? Like heroin is bad because people want to take it. It's not
Yeah,
bad because people it sucks. It's like, oh yeah, I want to just keep fucking doing it. I think I'm especially weird. Like I'm not immune to this stuff at all, obviously, but I definitely feel maybe different than most people. And I think it's got to do with like my ADHD brain stuff. Because for me, like I used to smoke cigarettes and drink and all that, and I can quit that stuff relatively easily compared to most people. But I don't think it's like a benefit. I think I'm just like my brain is so scattershot, I'll just get distracted by something else and not think about it.
yeah.
Like I don't have like the peripheral awareness of what's around me.
Okay.
Like if I'm having like a smoothie every day after the gym, I can do that for 7 years straight. And then the day my girlfriend puts it in the cupboard, I will just forget smoothies exist. Like it won't even
Yeah,
brain. I'll even
I
get hungry
understand.
at
Well, that's
yeah.
good for
I
you.
don't know.
I'm happy to hear.
Yes, smoothies is good. I like a smoothie, dude. It's
Yeah.
good. And
Okay.
what time is it there? It's like early as fuck, huh?
Yeah, it's 8:46 now, but it's all good.
You're like a morning person, hey?
No, no, I forced myself to do this at 7:30 so I can wake up
Oh, I'm
earlier.
sorry.
No, 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 I
Uh,
did it on purpose. Like I wanted to wake up earlier. I
nice.
aspire to be one. But okay, so
Yeah.
I want to riff on technology a bit longer.
Go
I
for it. I love I'm deep into the weeds with that stuff
good.
too because it's definitely like has been so I don't think I've ever explained what I do anyway.
Go ahead.
At the moment I'm super unemployed, which this is the longest period I've had without work, I
Yeah.
think since I've been 16. I haven't worked since November, which isn't an insane amount of time, but it's long for me. But I'm a tech project manager, so like
Hmm.
I manage projects largely tech. I've done some other stuff like policy and other um, operational stuff and stuff like that. But so like that's kind of been my focus. But I'm a bit of an idiot. Like I'm not very technically minded. I'm usually just managing groups of scientists or software engineers and stuff like that. So yeah, that's always been sort of my focus. Like that's what I like, and
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I moved up to a new city, and it's just been it's the less jobs up here in my specific niche, so I'm
Yeah.
probably gonna have to just take something else
Okay.
um for like a brief period. But yeah, for the last 8 years or so, I've been a project manager, so
Okay.
kind of it's all right. I don't mind it, but it was always like a step to I want to get enough money and do like startup investing and do my own like tech startup and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, I'm deep invested. I'm
Okay.
super bored with Neuralink though. I want that
Okay.
brain chip. I had so badly. But I do understand the hesitancy to it. Like it seems like a pretty drastic step. Like
Yeah.
it's like the first time really becoming different than humans.
Yeah,
You
I
know what I
think
mean?
that's it definitely worries me a lot. It's
You
also
you wouldn't you wouldn't do it, would you? You
no,
would
I wouldn't even
never.
think about it to be honest.
Do you think though that I don't you're 21, so I for me, I think you're like a baby, but like you probably had phones when you were like really young. But I remember when phones were coming out, every motherfucker, especially like parents, was just like, I'll never get that. That's so ridiculous. And then, as you said now, like it's very weird if you don't have a phone. It's like almost a necessity to
Yeah.
have a smartphone. I definitely think if Neuralink, I think Elon's very way too optimistic, and sometimes with biological stuff, he seems just very wrong. But if he's correct with his assumption that it will like make everybody have like, I don't know, like 130 IQ or something like that, it seems like everyone will eventually jump on board. Because like if it's such an advantage that you're like literally smarter than you would be, and your memory, you can store stuff artificial, all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone will go that
Do
way.
you know Balaji Srinivas? You
Hmm.
know, right?
Yeah, I don't think he likes me, but yeah, no.
Okay. Well,
He maybe I shouldn't say, but he DM'd me once. But I was just talking like, so there's this like group of people online that call like EAC,
okay.
and most of them are just like they're just like techno optimists, and I'm
Yeah.
all for that. But specifically that stuff I was saying about before about like biology dying and like having brain uploads and stuff like that, like the people, there's a few people in there who are like very focused on that, and like that kind of stuff scares me. So I was like talking shit about it once, and Balaj just like defending it or whatever. But he
Yeah. Yeah.
seems like a cool, nice other than that. But yeah,
Yeah. So I've listened to
I,
Balaji a bit, and I
he
heard
seems
him
smart.
hypothesize the following once. Sorry,
I say he seems smart as well. Like he
smart
seems like
guy for sure.
he's got a
Um,
lot of ideas, which is cool.
yeah, and he's been predicting a lot of things in a very accurate way, way ahead of time, which I find very impressive. But he basically
Oh,
hypothesized. Sorry.
he's got a lot of predictions, does he? I haven't seen him, but
Well,
I've
he
been
predicted
trying to
the COVID thing very accurately. Like he predicted masks were going to be a big deal, like way before it happened. So anyway, I think he has some authority on some subjects, and he's
yeah.
very much into technology as well. And I heard him
Mm.
say once that he thinks that the world is basically going to go into two directions. You're going to have people that are going to become more and more natural and try to let go of technology in some ways as well, and try to like, homeschool their kids and whatnot, and try to eat more organic
I get so
things. And then you're going to have people that are trying to go the Android route, you know, and
I'm
he
an
likes
Apple
that.
user. What? Fuck Android. It was a bad joke. I was saying it was a bit
Yeah.
stupid.
So I think it's possible that you're going to see like a split in what people are going to do, or maybe even more directions people are going to go into. I think the
Yeah.
Amish are interesting in the sense that they draw a line somewhere. They're like, hey, I'm not going to take this. I take a bit of that. I
The
definitely would.
line does seem weird to me though. The line seems a little because I might be wrong. I've watched this some YouTube docos, but it seems like most of the communities they actually do use things like chemical pesticides and stuff like that for
Yeah,
their
yeah.
farming. Or maybe it's just the community I saw on a doco, but that seems like that's very far away from what they should believe. I've heard
Well,
people say that they're like I listen to a lot of comedians and stuff, and like this one was talking about like having some of them at school because they'll do a thing where like they have a specific thing where for 1 year you go out into the community and you're not
mm,
Amish, and then you come back, and it doesn't have to be a year. It can be how it can be forever, but often it's a year. And he was saying he's like they are dumb, like they do seem like they are like not like I wouldn't say dumb, but they are like they seem simpler. They're like that's fucking big, like you know what I mean. Like they seem like I don't know, like an Aztec tribe sort of thing. They're like, what
okay.
the fuck?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. It's
I,
also a comedian. I would say that, but
I
so he
don't know
could be
either.
talking to.
But I think what technology does to us is it enhances our options in one way. So let's say I'm in a
Mm,
car, I have a navigation system, I can get somewhere super quickly. But in other ways, it also limits my natural ability to do things. So, for example, my natural ability to know where to go, um, my ability to run and be fit can be impaired by because I'm so used to the technology. We are extremely fragile in terms of how we gather food, so we need the supermarket. So I think in that sense, technology makes us much more empowered, but it also makes us much more fragile. And so
yeah,
there are people now seeing the cracks in the system that are like, okay, wait a second. If this goes on for longer and longer, and I impair myself so much while at the same time empowering myself, if it does eventually crack, I'm the first to die because I have nothing nothing left. So I really understand the people that are saying, hey, I'm going to do things more local. I'm going to do things more simple. I'm going to embrace parts of
Yeah.
technology and parts I'm going to let go. I think if you go all in on technology, um, it's a bet. So it could go really well for you. It could be that this thing keeps going for hundreds of years and you're going to live to be like 160 years, and good for
Mm.
you. But there's also a very good chance that at some point things are going to collapse in some way, and the people that are going to survive are not going to be the modern 21st century techno optimists. They're probably going to be the people that have stocked up on their food and know how to, let's say,
I get it.
survive, you know?
Yeah.
And you're saying that may
There's,
be very unlikely to happen, but I'm not so
well,
sure about
even if
that.
it does happen, it's sort of like there's an aspect of it where it's like if civilization collapses and like it's just that's such a shit outcome where like so many people die, or if like climate change kills 90% of the population and we can't rebuild or whatever the fuck. That's such a shit outcome that it's like it just seems that it's like like you don't necessarily want to like Doomsday Preppers. Have you ever seen that
Yeah,
show?
of
It's
course.
like usually like hillbillies and shit who are like I'll stop the zombies or whatever.
Yeah,
Like it's such a shit way to live, sort of like relative,
yeah.
that most people like even like I don't find as much importance about preparing for that, because at the end of the day, like if we're going through that sort of thing, like actually farming and hunting animals and living off the land, it's very hard, and it just seems like it's yeah, I don't know, like
Well, you don't have to go
I,
that far even. It doesn't have to completely collapse. But I mean, this
mm,
idea that we're just literally gonna like get better and better and better all the time, I think it's a
yeah.
fallacy. I think it's just not how reality works. So I'm afraid that things
Mm.
could get
Yeah,
a lot
we
worse.
definitely have different opinions. Yeah, it's interesting.
I think these things
Okay.
could get a lot worse before they get better. So I think at least being a bit less dependent on technology is probably in your best interest. Um,
Yeah, that's I don't know if you know the Unabomber. He's like a famous American dude. Have you ever heard of
I have
the
heard of this
guy?
name. I think our
He
good
was like
friend Joe
some
always mentions him.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And he goes more the conspiracy route with it. But he was some smart dude who like was like a mathematician or something, and he like went a little crazy. I think Joe always goes on that like the government gave him LSD and he went crazy. But I think I don't know enough about that, but I think he went a bit crazy. But he wrote this like sort of like manifesto, which
Yeah,
was just like a big ass essay. And it's actually like if you read it, you're like it's it's coherent, and he's not making like weird errors and stuff. But then he just at some point in it, at least in my opinion, he just like it just seems like very like honestly when I read it I was like, oh, most of this makes sense. And then he started bombing people, which he doesn't mention that sort of stuff in the manifesto. He's not like we should fucking burn everything down, but that's what he did. He started bombing like technicians and shit like that, like really just like stupid stuff. But that was his whole analysis, which was like we're going to become so dependent on technology that eventually, if anything happens or whatever, like, or even just if it keeps going, we'll be so dependent that we'll become basically just like babies for this thing. But one really interesting podcast that you might like is I watched this one with Sam Harris. It's episode 40 called Complexity and Stupidity with this guy David Crocker or something, and he was talking about the idea of he called them cognitive artifacts, and he's talking about basically there's these things where like if you use them for long enough you don't need the thing anymore. And the like classic example he gave was a abacus, which is like that thing with marbles where you slide it down and then you can do like mathematics, and you can do like I think it's like algebra or something on
hmm,
it very easy. But he was saying that like really expert abacus users can just internalize that in their head. So it's
yeah,
kind of like the thing we were talking about before with
uh
like
huh,
internalizing Jesus, but you can do that with a lot of things as well. And then he was saying there's this sort of the opposite of it, where it's like, eventually if self-driving cars get so good and everyone's using them, we won't even be able to drive because we would have like lost that ability. And it's sort of the same thing that you're talking about where
yeah,
like we're like a GPS is like an essential aspect. Yeah, that's interesting though. I am like I think we can just keep going forward. I'm very much like when I look at the trajectory of the world, it seems very weird that like a year like 100 years ago like light switches and like electricity was like that was like the most advanced shit we had. And then, we've invented antibiotics and nuclear bombs and the internet and the AI and fucking Netflix and, fake
Yeah.
pussies. Like what, all these crazy things. Fake pussies is more just like it makes me laugh, but it's not a serious one.
Yeah.
It's like all these things in such a short period. It just seems like we're gonna just like I'm actually thinking we're speeding up the rate of technological advancement, especially with the AI stuff. Like that stuff's moving so quick. And I think we're going to get to that point where we invent some AI. It'll be the last invention we have because it will just invent everything else for us. But for me, it seems like it's gonna actually get faster and
I think
faster.
it's
And I
going to
think,
get faster. We're moving exponentially.
but it
And
seems like you think it's gonna go down and
well,
then
I'm saying it like this: if you go from a ski slope down to the bottom of the mountain, the harder you go, the harder you're going to fall. That's all I'm worried
I'm
about.
I get the metaphor, but like yeah, but we're already at that point. I think like if we didn't have you know even just the tubes that connect the shitters to the fucking water or whatever. Like I couldn't even imagine. Like when the internet's out, I'm like, what the fuck do I do? Like I
But
don't
that's
even
what
know
I'm
how to.
saying, Levi. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Like, I think if you really view an exponent, I think, for example, the last 200 years, in many ways, are so positive. Like what you're saying, we lifted so many people out of poverty. I'm really in favor of that. I really like that. That's why I like free markets. I'm a big fan of Austrian economics. But if you do that without wisdom, things are going to go
say what
vastly
Austrian?
wrong. Sorry?
What did you say? Austrian economics? Is
Yeah.
that what I heard?
Yeah.
What's that? Is that
Oh,
some Germany?
it's for, I think we can have a separate discussion about that. It would be a long
We don't
conversation.
have to go down that. I was just
But
interested
all I'm
to.
saying with it is that I think technology, maybe it's a neutral thing. I'm not sure actually. Maybe I can't put a value judgment on it because it completely depends on how we use it. I mean, you could technically watch porn all day and it wouldn't be a very good thing, you know? So a
I've
lot of it is
tried.
in our own hands.
No.
A lot of it is in our own hands. So I think
Yeah.
without wisdom, we're useless. Anything we get. So I would put wisdom much higher than a material substance. So
Interesting.
that's what I'll say mostly about it. But going so fast, I think has a lot of potential, good and bad. So I really
Yeah.
can't say that it's gonna be Hakuna Matata or if it's gonna be like absolute disaster because both are possible.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a lot of people who are Peter Thiel is a student. He has like these four quadrant things where he talks about different worldviews, and some people are these indefinite optimists where they just think the world's always going to be better. They're like, oh, I was born in the 21st century. There's war is an absent thing and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's just a bit naive. Like, obviously, if you look at history, there's been some fucking
Yeah.
pretty hectic. Um, I like this guy Nick Bostrom, who's he's a I don't know exactly his what they call his role, but he thinks about like existential disasters and like end of world scenarios and that sort of stuff. And he had this interesting sort of like thought experiment, and it's called I don't remember what it's called, but he was talking about like if you imagine technology is like these balls and they're in like a giant urn, and like every time we pick out a technology, we get a white ball, and the white ball just symbolizes that this is like a good technology. It's good for the world, and that's it. There's no real downside. And he said that there's like some balls that are gray. So like you could think of like maybe nuclear technology where it's like we can create bombs. So it can be very disastrous and dangerous, but largely it's good. Nuclear energy is really good and that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
But he was saying like it might just be that there is black balls, and the black balls are just you pull them out and it just fucking kills everyone. Like
Yeah.
it's just and there'll be no way to ever know really if there is black balls until you pull one out and just fucking end everything.
And it only
And
takes one.
yeah, a lot of people don't like those sorts of like thought experiments. A lot of people are just like I only like to look at like the previous history of how things have been and then just extrapolate forward from that. But I just feel like, yeah, I feel like it seems like it could be a little bit naive because you can't really predict things like the internet when you're in the 1800s, and
Exactly.
like there might just be crazy things in the future. So
Yeah.
yeah, interesting. I do think we're a bit different though, because I'm very like, I think most technology is good. I notice it's a lot of Christian, like religious people are very anti-pornography. Is one thing I always notice, like, because I think it's a Christianity, it's very like God, he don't like you masturbate. He's like he's watching, he's not.
Well, I'm
Is
not.
that?
I would say that I don't know a lot of good things to say about pornography. I don't know if you
I say
can.
I'm not like a obsessed with it, but I've just it's never like there's this big no fap movement where guys are like not masturbating, and like I always see like people just like they're like it's like their crusade. They're like pornography is the devil, and I just for me it's just been like it's just like a random neutral thing. Like if you're a young guy, you just fucking you can't get pussy or whatever. You just you get horny and you watch shit. But it was never like for me like it seems like some people it like destroys their life. They're like fucking looking at porn while they're working and like crazy stuff. And that's
Yeah.
just not. I just I've just been like
Well, it happens
it's
to a
just
lot of
like
people. That's
yeah,
why
but
I'm.
it's
That's why
still
I think it's not a good thing. It's like it's destroyed so many people's lives, and it destroys
you
the
see
people's.
that's like but see that's what confused. I couldn't imagine it destroying my life. So is it as something where like there's like incel like people who are just like they've they don't know how to communicate with women or something, and then that is why it destroys it, or is it
Well,
just
it
like
definitely doesn't help them. I would say. Like,
for sure,
imagine if you're like 14 years old and you can look at any woman you want. Like,
I
that's
did. Even
crazy.
your imagination, dude. Like when I was young, you could just imagine it. You know what I mean? You could have like Britney Spears tits with fucking this chick's ass, and they like whatever you want. You know what I
It's very
mean?
creative.
And but you say you're not creative, but you are a very creative person. Yeah. Like I saw in your other video, you said that you don't feel very creative, but you're into all this stuff that seems very like you would be a creative person, and you're like
Well,
studying.
I was saying that I didn't consider myself creative before because I thought creativity had to do with, let's say, artistic endeavors like painting or drawing as a kid. So I always
Not
told
writing.
myself this story of like I'm not creative, but now I found out that I actually really like creating things. Um, but they're not exactly like drawings or whatever. They're more I like creating videos, I like creating podcasts, I like doing presentations, I like creating essays. I like, and
That
that's
all seems very creative to me.
yeah, so it's in a different sense. I just had to redefine the category. But
Hmm.
yeah, pornography, I would say one thing I
Yeah, I
what's
just seems like people go too hard on it, and I
yeah,
always feel
but
like it's the religious thing more than anything.
if you are 12,
Like
how
I'm
could
sure
you
there's
not?
negatives. Yeah, but isn't that just part of it? Like
Part of
when
what?
I was like when I was 12, I remember we'd have like magazines and shit. You know what I mean? And you would just like get your hands on like a magazine or whatever.
Okay,
Well,
well,
I'd say
here's the
12,
difference.
probably like 15,
Levi, here's the
really.
difference between a magazine and pornography. If you look at a
But that
magazine,
is porn.
huh?
Magazine is
Yeah, yeah, sure,
pornography,
sure, sure.
no?
Okay, but let's say the difference between video is that if you're just watching a magazine, it's already not a great thing, I would argue, but you're just meditating on a picture and then maybe you're imagining yourself. But if you're watching a video, you're sorry.
12, but yeah. Wasn't really meditating at
Okay,
12, but whatever.
anyway, you're watching a video, then you're training your brain. I think Huberman speaks about this very well. He says you're training your brain to become, um, let's say, turned on as other people are doing it, and that impedes your own ability
Oh, it's kind
to
of
get
weird.
to get erections when you have sex. So it's very dangerous in that
Interesting.
sense.
That's
There's there's a surge in young
not-
guys taking Viagra now because they can't get it up anymore because they watch so much porn. So that's what I'm saying.
You see, I have two things to say with that. One, I'm so pro, not Viagra, but I'm so pro Cialis, which is something else that's like Viagra but longer, because of specifically the neurological effects. Like it's really good for your brain, apparently, and it increases like the microcirculation of mitochondria in your brain or some shit like that. But I also look at drugs as like I know like in a modern context, people look at drugs in a very specific way where it's like Viagra is for it's penis pills, but really realistically, it's like a PD5 inhibitor where it's like it's something that happens to your body. But like as far as I understand it, the way that people make drugs is like they just throw in a lot of compounds together and they're like, oh, this does something. And then after the fact, they're like, oh, this is good for blood pressure or this is good
Yeah.
for whatever. Um, and specifically Viagra and Cialis, that was one like it was initially they were trying to do blood pressure, and apparently it is actually good for blood pressure. But I can see your point with what you're saying. Like that doesn't make sense. Like that's pretty intense. I just maybe I was just like a very horny kid or whatever, because it just I couldn't imagine like looking at porn and then just like not being able to like get it up with a girl unless I was having sex with girls who I probably shouldn't be having sex with because I'm not really into them and I'm just
Yeah.
young and desperate, whatever the fuck. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, people are having less sex than ever. Like our grandparents are having more sex than we are now. I think it's largely due to pornography.
Don't talk about my granddad like that, bro. What are you
It's
doing?
true.
No.
He was a player. No, but
My granddad fucking more than me? I don't think so. I don't
no,
think my granddad.
no, but I mean on average, let's say. So I think it's definitely worrisome. I think a lot of people are not pursuing relationships for this reason. I think a lot of people are,
I think,
well, a lot of
I
men
think,
specifically, let's say, especially young
yeah.
men.
I think it's more than that though. Like I don't think you could boil it down to
No, of
that.
course
Like
not, but it definitely doesn't help.
I think like I always see stats where it's like, 40 years ago people had testosterone levels like 3 times as high and all that. And also I see things about like plastic
Yeah,
fucking
plastics as well.
apparently
It's a
that
lot
can
of
fuck up.
things.
Apparently, mm,
But you see the side
smoking.
effects of technology. You can develop something
Yeah.
without knowing if it's going to be good or bad, and then before you know it, you have a bunch of, let's
Well,
say,
here, how about this? That I agree with you. How is it like the whole priesthood thing is kind of fucking it's kind of weird, right? That you will decide to be celibate and save yourself for Jesus or whatever it is. I don't know. I'm just getting, but that like that's kind of weird. Then, do you think that that's weird? That like you're gonna be a priest and just decide
to
I'm
not.
gonna I'm gonna kill my sexuality or whatever the fuck it is.
I think it serves its role. I think some people are able to do that, and for some people, it's not a bad thing to do. I think that
But
abstinence.
you were just saying moments ago that it's bad that people aren't having sex and stuff like that. Isn't that like the prime example of
Well, you
like
can't apply a rule to everyone. You can't apply, let's say,
arbitrary rules to
there's one thing
everyone?
that I can say: everyone should eat food. Like there's a very few
Food.
things that everyone should do, but everyone shouldn't take psychedelics, and maybe everyone shouldn't be having sex. I think there's definitely a role for monks and priests and nuns. I think they have some of them have a big added value because of what they're doing.
But do you think they like so here's the thing, I don't care. Like you were saying talking about like the positives of not, abusing the imagination or pornography and all that sort of stuff and having, real relationships with your partner, blah blah blah. I I'm pretty sure you can teach the gospel and still go fuck some hotties with some big naturals. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that they're necessarily like I don't think a nun would be. In fact, I think a nun would be better if she was having sex rather than worse because I hear that nuns are bitches. Like they're really mean, angry bitches. I don't know. That's probably mean. They're super nice nuns. I don't know. That's just what I hear. But whatever. But like you could be a priest and have a wife, right? Like I don't think that would be like, oh, like I'm worse at teaching people about Jesus. Or you disagree?
I don't
Like
know.
I don't even see the point of it, to be honest. Like I don't even get the celibacy
You don't
thing
get celibacy at all. You don't get
unless it's
abstinence.
just like yeah, unless it's just for like mind control. Like I want to be as powerful mentally. I'm gonna restrict something that is like a natural function.
I
Do you
think
know
that
what I
there's
mean?
definitely a role for, um, let's say the what you call them, ascetics. They have it
Aesthetic.
in any religion. There's ascetics. I think that there's definitely a role for them. I think they can get insights that other people can't because they are
Oh,
so like detached from their desires. They live in such a unique state. I'm not saying that it's something everyone should pursue. Definitely not, because then there wouldn't be any people left. But yeah, I definitely see a role for it. I think it facilitates certain experiences as well. I
maybe.
Yeah.
Does that mean, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of Agora? They're like Indian, you would call it, I don't know if you'd call them ascetics, but they're like a crazy level of like they'll do things like like pull out dead bodies from the Ganges because they're like Indian dudes and they will like eat dead bodies and like
Yeah, I
eat
think they're
shit.
swinging a bit too far for me there.
Yeah. But don't you if you think there's like something to be gained from like those weird pursuits, wouldn't they have like some weird level of magical awesomeness? I'm not pro it. I just don't get any of that. Like, not that I don't get any of it, but like, I
I think you
I'm
do. I
all
think you really understand it, to be honest. I think you understand it
it,
on a bit of a less extreme level, let's say. I think you're just drawing the line elsewhere. It's like
I
you
understand it, but
understand people dieting, right? You understand people
Hmm,
fasting. You understand people,
yeah,
you know, if you understand that, you can understand monks. It's not a very difficult concept to grasp.
I guess. But for me, it seems like, there's people who do very extreme things. Like I've watched, My Strange Addiction. There's guys that drink hand sanitizer and eat glass and stuff like that. Like so you can do a lot of things,
Yeah,
right?
I wouldn't do that.
But yeah, it seems horrible. And maybe they're just faking it for the show, but it seems like there's people just like munching glass or whatever. There's one chick, she was eating like mattresses, like she just loved it. There's this one, I got so excited thinking about this show. This chick just once like she was like washing her hands after like the urn of her mother spilled, and she like washed like her hand, but then she realized there's like a little bit of her mum on her, like who was cremated, and then she like just touched it a bit on her lips or something. This was her what she was saying, and she became addicted to eating the fucking ashes of her
Well,
mom.
it's nasty.
Yeah, uh, I don't know why I went there, but what I was going with that is like I guess I'm more like the Buddha's path of where like he talks about the whole middle way where like he was kind of like in between these two sorts of you know hedonistic, just embrace your fucking inner whatever and eat and fuck on do all that. And then there's the asceticist route of like, you need to basically live off air and just like sit there. And I think he was kind of like, no, actually, there's like this middle way. And I'm
Yeah,
probably, I might be,
I
I
like
might
the
be
middle
having like,
path, but I like the middle
yeah,
path. I think it's good for most people for sure.
but like, I don't know. Did Jesus, was he getting it in? He have a misso, a girlfriend or boyfriend? I don't judge.
I don't think
Was
so.
he not? Right. Do you think he would be less of a great teacher if he was,
If you had
you
a
know,
wife,
busting his nut? Because he was hanging out with prostitutes. That's what you got to understand too. Mm. I'm sorry, I'm getting silly now.
I don't know.
Getting stupid.
I don't know. I don't know enough. I don't think I should speak on it, to be honest. I don't think I have the
That's fine.
wisdom for it. But yeah.
Oh, I'll just quickly change subject, and then I feel like I'm getting too silly, and like maybe I'm
No, it's
getting
all
too
good. I
silly.
also have to leave soon. So yeah, let's finish it up with the last one.
I two really quick ones. From what I heard, you talking with your girlfriend. One was you said the something about the masculine preceding the feminine, right?
Hmm.
Do you remember saying that?
Yeah.
I guess the only comment I was going to say on that is like, well, scientifically, that doesn't seem to be the case. 'Cause I don't know if you know this, but apparently everyone starts as a woman in birth, and that's
It's
actually
not
why.
all. Jesus.
Oh yeah, I went too literal with it. I'm very whatever. Don't.
I'm just picturing Sam Harris being like, I have a telescope and I can't see heaven. It's like it's not what I
Yeah,
meant.
I get a bit artistically like way too serious about things,
No, it's all
which is
good.
bad. I joke a lot too, because so it's probably not
No,
helpful. I think
I really I like talking to you a lot. And I'd love to do it again. I think it's a lot of fun.
yeah,
Really.
it's good. Last little quick one is you mentioned to your girlfriend something that I just really like this idea, and I've come to the same conclusion myself many times, and I just love it.
Yeah.
It's like talking about like there's something about childhood where kids play, and often when you're an adult, you just forget how to play.
Hmm.
And I saying something like you want to get back into that mode of being and actually, experience life creatively and do things just like for the fun of it and enjoy your life. I think that's like a really beautiful sentiment, and I'm like on board. Like I think so many people get so attached to this idea of like I'm a mature adult. I don't fucking play
Yeah,
Legos or whatever.
absolutely. I
And it
think yeah.
seems weird.
It's part of being an aligned individual to incorporate play. I think incorporating play even in a conversation like this, it's very important to
Yeah.
play, let's say, to have rules that you both understand. Like there's rules to a conversation, and then within those boundaries you can play, and there's more dynamic energy there. I think it's beautiful.
Mhm. Yeah, look, I think that's a good place to stop before I say something dumb that offends
Before you get canceled.
half the population. Uh, yeah, it's good to talk to you. I hope you have a fucking good 2024 and
You too,
yeah,
man. Let's
keep
connect soon
on.
again. I am excited to speak again, and I
Yeah,
hope you
nice.
continue pursuing your podcast. I'm excited to see more.
Yeah, I actually got two more lined up for
Awesome,
this
man.
company, so that's good. Yeah, I have two that I need to upload to my YouTube and
Okay,
stuff, but
please let me know once you do it, and I'll watch them. If you send me a link.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I've got one on Tuesday and one on Sunday. I don't know. I can't
Good.
remember. I'm such a weird time zone that it's kind of like a
It's all good.
yeah.
It's all good. Thanks for
Anyway,
talking today, huh?
good
See you later.
talking. Thanks.
Have a good one. Oh, did you record it, by the way? Is it still going for you?
I did, but last time it only recorded 30 minutes,
Okay.
so I bet
Let
it's
me know, yeah?
probably done.
All right. See you guys. Bye bye.